In 1914, Henry Ford made what everyone called the dumbest move in business history. He doubled his workers' pay overnight. The press said he'd lost his mind. His competitors laughed out loud. Wall Street predicted bankruptcy within months. But what nobody saw coming was that this one decision would make Ford wealthier than he'd ever been. Before we go deeper, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. There's a certain kind of mistake most people avoid their entire lives. Not because it's dangerous, but because it looks stupid. And we've been trained since childhood to fear looking stupid. So we follow the herd. We do what everyone else does. We think the way everyone else thinks. And we end up exactly where everyone else ends up. Stuck in mediocrity, trapped in survival mode, living a life that's barely alive. But there's a rare breed of person who sees beyond the obvious, who spots a door where everyone else sees a solid wall, who's willing to look insane long enough for the world to realize it was genius all along. Henry Ford was one of those people. And on January 5th, 1914, he made a move that shocked the entire planet. He announced he was doubling the daily wage of Ford Motor Company workers, from $2.50 a day to $5. Overnight. No warning. No negotiation. He just doubled it. To understand how crazy this was, you need context. Nobody paid that kind of money. Nobody. The entire industry ran on cheap labor, brutal shifts, constant turnover. That's just how the game was played. Everyone knew it. Everyone accepted it. And suddenly, this guy breaks every single rule. The reaction was instant. Economists said he was committing financial suicide. Newspapers ran articles predicting Ford's collapse. Competitors openly mocked him. Shareholders panicked. One of them, John Dodge, even sued Ford for wasting company resources, because in their world, paying workers well was wasteful. And look, I get their logic. If you think small, if you only see what's right in front of you, it was insane. Doubling wages meant drastically increasing costs. And higher costs, in any mediocre businessman's mind, means lower profits. So Ford's decision looked like a death sentence. But Ford didn't think small. He didn't just see what was in front of him. He saw the entire game. And he understood something nobody else did. Scarcity is an illusion created by scarcity thinking. Let me say that again. Scarcity is an illusion created by scarcity thinking. The entire world operated on one principle: extract maximum output for minimum investment. Squeeze people dry. And when they're used up, replace them. It was a human meat grinder. And everyone thought that's just how it had to be. Because everyone was staring at the ground, at the immediate, at next quarter's numbers. Ford was looking at the horizon. He realized something simple but revolutionary. Happy workers work better. Well-paid workers stay longer. Workers who don't need 2 or 3 jobs just to survive have actual energy to produce real results. And most importantly, well-paid workers buy cars. That last part is brilliant. Ford wasn't just creating employees, he was creating customers. He was expanding his own market. While everyone else was trying to squeeze more profit from every penny, Ford was planting an entire forest. And the results? Devastating. But not for Ford, for the competition. First, turnover collapsed. Before the wage increase, Ford had a turnover rate of 370% annually. That means to keep 100 workers, the company had to hire 370. The cost of constantly training new people was insane. After the increase, turnover dropped to nearly zero. People fought to get into Ford. And once they were in, they never left. Second, productivity exploded. Not because Ford demanded more, but because people were genuinely motivated. They had a real reason to wake up early, to take pride in their work, to actually care. And when you care, everything changes. Quality changes. Everything changes. Third, absenteeism vanished. You know that thing where people miss work because they're tired, sick, unmotivated? Gone. When you're treated well, when you're valued, you don't want to miss work. You want to be there. And fourth, most important, sales exploded. Because suddenly there was a new class of consumers. People who could only dream of owning a car could now buy one. And guess which car they bought? The one from the company that paid them well. The Ford Model T. Ford transformed workers into customers. He expanded the market instead of competing for the existing market. And while everyone else was fighting over scraps, he built an entirely new table. But there's a deeper layer here. A layer most people miss. Because Ford didn't do this out of kindness. He wasn't a saint. He was a businessman, a capitalist genius. And he understood something fundamental about prosperity. It doesn't work by subtraction. It works by multiplication. Let me break this down. Scarcity thinking operates like this. If I give you more, I have less. If I pay you more, I earn less. It's a zero-sum game. Someone always loses for someone else to win. But abundance thinking operates differently. If I give you more, I create conditions to receive even more back. If I pay you more, you produce more, stay longer, buy more. And in the end, everyone wins. It's a positive-sum game. Everyone can grow simultaneously. And this isn't just pretty theory. This is reality mechanics. This is how real fortunes are built. Not through maximum exploitation, but through genuine value creation. Ford understood that wealth isn't a fixed pie you need to slice up. Wealth is a pie that can grow infinitely if you know the right ingredients. And one of the most powerful ingredients is treating people like human beings, not disposable resources. Now let's talk about the most interesting part, the psychological effect. Because what Ford did wasn't just an economic move. It was a masterful psychological play. When you pay someone significantly above market rate, you're not just giving money. You're giving dignity. You're saying you're worth more than the world says you're worth. And that changes everything. It changes how that person sees themselves, how they behave, their level of commitment, loyalty, energy they put into their work. Ford created an identity. Working at Ford wasn't just a job. It was an achievement. It was status. It was pride. And people with pride in what they do deliver extraordinary results. But there's more. Ford also created a standard, a new normal. Before him, the entire industry paid poorly because everyone paid poorly. There was no comparison. But when Ford doubled wages, he forced everyone to rethink. He became the measuring stick. And suddenly, all the other companies looked bad, exploitative, greedy. Ford positioned himself as the good guy. And that has incalculable value, because the best people started wanting to work for him. Customers started preferring to buy from him. And the press, which had criticized him, started praising him. He transformed a financial decision into a moral statement. And that's narrative power. That's shaping public perception in your favor. But here's the point I want you to burn into your mind. Ford didn't wait for the world to change before doing this. He changed the world by doing it. He didn't wait for permission. He didn't wait for consensus. He didn't wait for perfect conditions. He just acted. And this is where most people lose. We wait. We wait for the economy to improve. We wait to have more money. We wait for the right moment. We wait for someone to validate our vision. But the right moment never comes. Because the right moment doesn't exist. There's only the moment you decide to create. Ford created his own moment. And by creating it, he flipped the entire game. He didn't play better within the rules. He changed the rules. And that's what separates billionaires from the broke. It's not talent. It's not luck. It's the courage to rewrite the game. Now you might be thinking, okay, but I don't own a factory. I can't double anyone's salary. This doesn't apply to me. And that's exactly where you need to stop and think deeper. Because the principle isn't about salaries. The principle is about investment. It's about planting before harvesting. It's about giving value before extracting value. It's about trusting abundance when everyone around you is preaching scarcity. And this applies to everything. Your business, your job, your relationships, your entire life. You want to grow in your career? Deliver more than they ask. Way more. Make everyone wonder how you do it. Sounds stupid? It does. But that's exactly how you become irreplaceable. You want to build a business? Give more value than you charge. Surprise people. Delight them. Make them talk about you. Sounds like a loss? It does. But that's how you build a reputation worth millions. You want deep relationships? Give real attention, real time, real presence. Sounds like a waste of time? It does. But that's how you build a network that will sustain you for life. The pattern is always the same. Invest when everyone's holding back. Give when everyone's taking. Trust when everyone's doubting. And wait. Because the harvest always comes, but it only comes for those who planted. Ford planted in 1914 and harvested for decades. He didn't just avoid bankruptcy, he dominated. Ford Motor Company became one of the most profitable companies on the planet. The Model T became the car of the century. And Henry Ford became one of the richest men in history. And it all started with a decision that looked stupid. So when you look at your own path and face a choice that seems crazy to everyone else, maybe, just maybe, you're closer to genius than you think. And speaking of choices that seem crazy, but change everything, there's an old story. I don't know if it's real or symbolic, but it perfectly illustrates what I want to show you now. Legend says an old farmer had an only son. That son was everything to him. One day, the boy was breaking in a wild horse when he fell and shattered his leg. The neighbors came to console the old man. "What a tragedy! Your son broke his leg." And the old man replied, "Maybe." A week later, the army came through the village drafting all young men for war. The farmer's son wasn't taken because of his broken leg. The neighbors returned. "What luck! Your son escaped the war." And the old man replied, "Maybe. You understand what this means? It means we never know, in the moment, whether what seems like loss is actually gain, whether what seems like stupidity is wisdom, whether what seems like loss is investment. We only find out later, when the story unfolds. And Ford knew this. He had that long-term vision most people lack, because most people are trapped in the short term. Next month, the bill due Friday. Immediate results. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's survival. But survival doesn't build empires. Vision builds empires. And the difference between surviving and thriving is precisely here, in the ability to see beyond the obvious. To act based on what you know will happen, not on what everyone sees happening right now. Ford saw the future in 1914. He saw a world where workers would have purchasing power, where a real middle class would exist, where mass consumption would be possible. And he decided to build that future instead of waiting for it. That's the mentality of those who create real wealth. You don't wait for conditions. You create conditions. Now let's break down the psychology behind this, because there are layers here most people don't perceive. And these layers make all the difference between those who grow and those who stagnate. First layer, reciprocity. When you give something valuable to someone without demanding anything immediately in return, you activate one of the deepest human instincts, the instinct to reciprocate. It's not manipulation, it's human nature. We feel indebted when someone treats us well, and we want to pay that debt. Ford didn't ask for anything in return for the raise. He just gave. And what happened? People reciprocated with loyalty, productivity, commitment. They gave back far more than they received, because that's how it works. Genuine generosity always returns multiplied. Second layer, identity. Ford didn't just change workers' salaries, he changed their identity. Suddenly, they weren't disposable factory hands anymore. They were part of something bigger. They were the industry elite. Ford workers. That carried weight. It had meaning. And when you change someone's identity, you change everything. Because we act according to who we believe we are. If you see yourself as disposable, you act disposably. If you see yourself as valuable, you act valuable. Ford elevated workers' identity, and they elevated themselves along with it. Third layer, contrast. Before Ford, all employers paid poorly, so there was no contrast. But when Ford doubled wages, he created violent contrast. And contrast is one of the most powerful psychological tools that exists, because the human brain doesn't process absolute values. It processes relative values, comparisons. Is a $50,000 car expensive or cheap? Depends. If you're comparing it to a $100,000 car, it's cheap. If you're comparing it to a $20,000 car, it's expensive. The value didn't change, but perception changes completely based on contrast. Ford created perfect contrast. He made the rest of the industry look bad. And that wasn't an accident. It was strategy. He knew that to stand out, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be significantly better than the rest. And look, this isn't about being nice. This is about understanding the rules of the perception game. In the real world, truth matters less than the perception of truth. And whoever controls perception controls the game. Ford controlled his perception and won. Fourth layer, momentum. There comes a moment when things start moving on their own. It's like a snowball rolling down a mountain. At first it's hard. You push, 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 and nothing seems to happen. But after a certain point, it gains its own life. And then you just need to steer. Ford created momentum. When he doubled wages, news spread everywhere. Everyone started talking. Newspapers, radio, people on the street. Ford became the most talked about company in the country. And attention is currency. Ford earned billions in free publicity. He didn't need to spend a cent on advertising. His decision was the advertising. And that generated a virtuous cycle. More attention brought more candidates. More candidates meant choosing the best. The best delivered better results. Better results generated more profit. More profit allowed paying even better. And the cycle continued. That's the difference between reactive action and strategic action. Reactive action solves the immediate problem. Strategic action creates a system that solves problems forever. Now, there's a question many people ask. But what if it doesn't work? What if I invest, give value, put myself out there, and nothing comes back? It's a legitimate question, and the answer is, it can happen. Not every bet pays off. Not every investment returns. Not every generosity is reciprocated. That's real. But you know what the problem with thinking that way is? You'll never try. And if you never try, you guarantee failure. You eliminate the possibility of success. Ford could have thought that way. He could have looked at the risks and given up, but he didn't give up. Because he understood something fundamental. The biggest risk is not risking. The biggest loss is not investing. The biggest mistake is not trying. And there's something else. Ford didn't bet blind. He calculated. He analyzed. He knew what he was doing. It wasn't impulse, it was strategy. And that's important because there's a giant difference between intelligent boldness and irresponsible stupidity. Intelligent boldness is when you see an opportunity others don't see and act based on solid logic. Irresponsible stupidity is when you act without thinking just because someone said you should be brave. Ford had logic. He knew turnover was expensive. He knew motivated workers produced more. He knew creating consumers was expanding the market. Everything made sense. It just didn't make sense to those who weren't seeing the entire game. So the lesson here isn't be impulsive. The lesson is think deep, see far, and act with conviction. And speaking of seeing far, let me tell you something about modern billionaires. Because what Ford did in 1914 didn't stay in 1914. This principle is alive today, being applied right now by people you know. Take Jeff Bezos. In Amazon's early years, he made no profit. On the contrary, he burned money, invested everything in infrastructure, logistics, customer experience. Wall Street criticized. Investors left. Everyone said he was crazy. But Bezos wasn't playing the short-term game. He was playing the long-term game. He was building an empire. And today, Amazon is one of the most valuable companies on the planet. Take Elon Musk. He put all the money he made from PayPal into two absurd bets: electric cars and rockets. Everyone laughed. Experts said he'd go broke. And he almost did. Multiple times. But he didn't quit. Because he wasn't trying to make quick money. He was trying to change the world. And money is a consequence of changing the world, not the goal. Take Steve Jobs. When he returned to Apple in 1997, the company was on the brink of bankruptcy. And what did he do? Cut 90% of products. Focused on few. Invested everything in design, experience, perfection. Seemed like suicide. But it was strategy. And 10 years later, Apple launched the iPhone and became the most valuable company in history. The pattern is always the same. Long-term vision. Investment when everyone's cutting. Trust when everyone's doubting. And patience to wait for the harvest. But here's the part I really want you to understand, because everything I've said so far might seem distant. Might seem like it only applies to billionaires, business owners, geniuses. And that's not true. This applies to you. Now. Today. You don't need to own a factory to apply Ford's principle. You just need to understand the essence. And the essence is simple. Invest in yourself before demanding from yourself. Let me explain this better. Most people operate like this. I'll work hard when it's worth it. I'll study when I have time. I'll invest when I have money. I'll commit when they pay me well. It's always conditional, always waiting. But people who truly prosper operate differently. They reverse it. They say, I'll work hard now, and that will make it worth it. I'll study now, and that will create time. I'll invest now, and that will generate money. I'll commit now, and that will make them pay me well. You see the difference? It's a complete logic reversal. And it's this reversal that changes everything. Ford invested in workers before they proved value. And they proved value because of the investment. Cause and effect. But the cause came first. If you want your life to change, you need to change first. You don't wait for life to change so you can change. You change and life responds. Want a practical example? Here we go. You want to earn more at your job? Don't wait for the raise to work better. Work better now. Deliver as if you already earn double. Act as if you're already the person you want to be. And watch. In 6 months, either you'll get promoted, or you'll receive better offers, or you'll have clarity to leave and build something of your own. But something will change. Because energy always returns. You want to build a business? Don't wait to have clients to deliver value. Deliver value first. Create free content. Help people without charging. Show what you can do. Build reputation. And when people need someone, they'll remember you. Because you already proved yourself. You already gave. You want better relationships? Don't wait for people to treat you well so you treat them well. You start. You give real attention. You genuinely care. You're present. And watch how people change around you. Not everyone, but the ones who matter. And those are the ones who stay. Look, some people will say this is being a fool, that you're being used, that you need to hold your cards close. And you know what I say? Those people will die average. Because their logic is scarcity logic. It's protection logic. It's fear logic. And fear builds nothing. Fear only protects what already exists. And what already exists, for most people, isn't much. If you want something different, you need to act different. And acting different means having the courage to look wrong until you prove you were right all along. Ford looked wrong for months, maybe years, until it became obvious he was right. And then everyone wanted to copy him. But it was too late. He already had the advantage. He already had momentum. He'd already won. So if you're waiting for guarantees before acting, you've already lost. Because guarantees come after. Always. Action comes first. Now let me ask you a direct question, and I want you to answer mentally, with honesty. What are you holding back out of fear of losing? What investment aren't you making because it seems risky? What change aren't you making because everyone around you thinks it's crazy? Because that might be exactly the thing that will change your life. I'm not telling you to be irresponsible. I'm not telling you to bet everything on red and hope for the best. I'm telling you to look deep, analyze well, and if it makes sense, if the logic is solid, if the vision is clear, have the courage to act, even if nobody understands. Because Ford didn't need anyone's approval. He acted, and the world adjusted. And you have the same power. You might not have a factory, might not have millions, but you have your life. And your life is your laboratory. It's where you test. It's where you create. It's where you build your own empire, your way, in your time. And if you've been following the channel, you probably know about the 7 mental keys. They're part of the Wealth Recode, a direct method that works exactly on the invisible blocks keeping you stuck. It's different from anything you've seen. To access it, it's simple. I'll be leaving the link in the description. Now, before I finish, I want you to do something. Comment below. What teaching hit you hardest in this video? Was it Ford's story? The reciprocity principle? The idea of investing before demanding? Tell me, because I read everything. And your answer might become the next video. And there's something else. If you want to deepen this abundance mindset even more, this long-term vision, this courage to act differently, I have a video here on the channel that perfectly complements what we talked about today. It's about how millionaires see money in a completely different way from most people. And when you understand that difference, everything changes. I'll leave the link on screen and in the description. And remember, Ford didn't wait for the world to change before acting. He acted. And the world changed. You have the same choice, every day, with every decision. This is the initiate. See you in the next video.